Hey everyone! If you enjoyed this video, the full version is available on Patreon. I'll be uploading all my content there going forward.
Chapter 1. Well. This was the first clear signal Qin Ziming's brain sent when he regained consciousness. He slowly opened his eyes, and in his field of vision was a tilted sky, with clouds dyed a dirty orange-red. The walls on both sides emitted a thick, sour stench mixed with the smell of rotting garbage. Hiss! Qin Ziming tried to get up, but found a dull pain in the back of his head, and even felt some sticky liquid flowing down the back of his neck. He tried to move his arm, and the joints made a heavy, stiff creaking sound, as if the body had not been used for a long time. Damn it, what's going on? Where am I? Barely managing to prop himself up, Qin Ziming began to recall his memories before he lost consciousness. He was still in his room at the time, staying up all night to finish watching the latest chapter of Chainsaw Man, and he couldn't help but feel excited when he saw the scene at the end where the American flag on the moon was torn apart. What is it? Is it using the entire moon as a weapon? As soon as he finished speaking, Qin Ziming felt a sharp pain in his heart. Before he could even scream for help, everything went black, and when he woke up, he was here. This is unbelievable. What kind of place is this? Qin Ziming tried to get up, but when he looked down at his hands supporting him on the ground, his pupils contracted. This is the hands that had accompanied him through 18 years of his youth and countless action movies were now even longer and more slender, with more distinct joints, and the skin was somewhat pale, with even the bluish-purple veins visible. He suddenly touched his face. Unfamiliar cheekbone contours, a high, straight nose, and thin, cold lips. Time travel. The word instantly popped into Qin Ziming's head, echoing with an absurdity. Immediately afterwards, a memory that didn't belong to him flooded into his mind. Well. Qin Ziming instantly clutched his head in pain, trying to alleviate the agony. The original owner of this body was also named Qin Ziming, a 17-year-old Hyuxia boy who lived in Kurosaki Town, a small town near Tokyo. His parents were killed in the battle against demons years ago, and he lived on meager compensation and odd jobs. A few hours earlier, he was robbed by a group of thugs in this alley. He was hit hard on the back of the head, and the thugs ran away as soon as they saw that things were going badly. As the boy lay dying, something came, drawn by the scent of death. That thing has no specific form, it's more like a law, or something else entirely. It thirstily burrowed into the boy's still warm body, beginning to devour the remaining soul, but just as it was about to take over the empty shell. Another Qin Ziming has arrived. His consciousness, from another world, crashed into this unfinished possession ritual like a meteorite falling from the sky. The price was that the original owner's consciousness completely dissipated, along with most of the original owner's memories. He also suppressed that things will deep into his consciousness. He, who had traveled from another world, became the master of this body. Holy crap, this is... Qin Ziming leaned against the damp brick wall to stand up, feeling dizzy. My parents were killed by a demon. What world is this? And what is that thing that crawled into my body? Staggering to the alley entrance, Qin Ziming saw his face clearly through the reflection in the water. She had short, black hair with slightly messy ends, and her face was fairly pretty, except for a thin, dark red line at the corner of her eye. The pupils are very dark, almost pure black, and if you look closely, you can occasionally see an unnatural, amber-colored glimmer deep within them. Suddenly, another wave of memories flooded into Qin Ziming's mind. Qin Ziming's eyes instantly lost focus, as if he had become a puppet. Born of fear, the more feared the name of a demon, the stronger its power. Hell! As that final, earth-shattering roar exploded deep within his soul, Qin Ziming's pupils instantly regained their luster. He plunged his hands into the puddle, his heart pounding wildly as if it were about to burst forth. He stared at the cold sweat dripping into the puddle, and at his pupils, which had now turned amber. Qin Ziming finally understood. I've been transported to the world of Chainsaw Man. That world filled with demons, contracts, and madness. Qin Ziming slumped to the side, and after a long while, he began to sort through all the memories in his mind. In other words, the thing inside me is actually a demon, but it seems to have just been born in this world and hasn't fully formed yet. It wanted to possess the original owner, but I ended up possessing it instead. Qin Ziming was speechless after he finished speaking. This is so melodramatic. So what am I now? A demon or a monster? Surely I can't be a weapon man, can I? After saying that, he touched the dark lines at the corner of his eye. I remember in Chainsaw Man, the devil's head retained some demonic features, so should I be considered a devil, right? As Qin Ziming was thinking, a sudden, violent spasm came from his stomach. I'm so hungry. Qin Ziming knelt on the ground again. This feeling was different from the normal state of hunger, it was like a burning desire for some special substance that came from the depths of his mind. Blood. Demons can heal their injuries by drinking blood, and Qin Ziming's injury to the back of his head has caused his demonic instincts to make him crave blood. Vomit. Qin Ziming leaned against the wall and gagged a few times, but nothing came out. His vision began to sharpen, he could even spot the tracks of a few rats scurrying through the alley, hear the clinking of a convenience store door opening and closing in the distance, and smell the fresh blood of a living person. No. No. Qin Ziming clenched his teeth, his nails digging slightly into his palms. This slight pain brought him back to his senses a little. We need to get out of here quickly. After saying that, he hurriedly staggered out of the alley. Kurosaki Town is a typical small town outskirts, with low and dilapidated buildings, narrow streets, and at least half of the streetlights not working. Qin Ziming walked along the road like a beggar. Because it was dusk, several high school students in uniform walked by together. When they saw his clothes stained with blood and dirt, they quickly looked away and hurried away, as if trying to avoid him at all costs. Qin Ziming was focused on resisting his demonic instincts and had no time to pay attention to the reactions of others. Based on the original owner's remaining, hazy memories, he found an old apartment building. After reaching the end of the third floor, he stopped in front of a rusty iron door, took a key out of his pocket, and opened the door. The room was only about 10 square meters, with just a bed, a table, and a simple wardrobe. In one corner, there were boxes of instant noodles and empty beer cans piled up. The air was filled with the smells of mildew and dust. It seems the original owner wasn't a clean person. Qin Ziming stared at everything in the room, his eyes twitching slightly. After this period of resistance, he has been able to barely resist the demon's instinct for blood. Of course, things might be different if blood is seen. After locking the door, Qin Ziming slid down to the floor with his back against the door and let out a long sigh. I'd better take a shower first. Looking at his now smelly and filthy body, Qin Ziming felt a chill and stood up to walk towards the bathroom. Chapter 2. While taking a bath, Qin Ziming carefully examined the body. He was thin, but still had some muscle definition. The wound on the back of his head had long since healed due to his current demonic constitution. After showering, he changed into a clean white shirt and black pants, and cleaned up the trash in the corner. Looking at the slightly cleaner room, Qin Ziming couldn't help but feel much better. That's more like it. The old place was practically a pigsty. He clapped his hands, somewhat smugly, and then lay down on the bed. With his right hand pressed against his forehead and staring at the ceiling, Qin Ziming looked somewhat bewildered. Everything that had happened before kept replaying in his mind. For some people, time travel is a good thing, but for Qin Ziming, it is not. Before he transmigrated, although he didn't live a life of great wealth and luxury, he was still considered happy. His parents are both hard-working and admirable working-class people. He also has younger siblings. Although his grades are only average, they are still respectable. Qin Ziming didn't have any particular hobbies. He neither smoked nor drank. He usually liked to read comics and play games in heaven. He loved watching Chainsaw Man, and had a love-hate relationship with the second freest man on earth. He even fantasized about what he would do if he traveled back in time, saving this person and that person. But this is completely different from actually time traveling. Qin Ziming couldn't help but rub his throbbing temples. The setting of Chainsaw Man is around 1997. The S-Union supposedly didn't disintegrate because Pokeda swallowed the demons of World War II and nuclear weapons, and the world order differs greatly from actual history. As Qin Ziming rubbed the wound, he recalled the information he knew about the Chainsaw Man. His gaze fell on the alarm clock and calendar on the bedside table. 1997. Wow, that really is. Qin Ziming was at a loss for words. How did you manage to time travel so much, of all times, in this year? Qin Ziming sighed, as if he had already resigned himself to his fate. Kurosaki Town, this place wasn't mentioned in the manga. He murmured. It seems nothing major has happened in this town, so it shouldn't attract any big shots from Tokyo. I just need to hold out for a year, wait until Denji finishes his ginger and pork stir-fry, and then I can go out and roam the world freely. Ha ha ha. Qin Ziming became increasingly smug as he thought about it, and couldn't help but burst into laughter. His stomach growled at this inopportune moment, not because he wanted to drink blood, but because he was genuinely hungry. Oh dear, let's find out what we can eat first. Qin Ziming seemed to deflate instantly and began searching the room for food. Oh my, I thought this guy had been robbed of all his money, turns out he had some savings hidden away. Qin Ziming took out several bills from a jar under the bed, they looked to be worth tens of thousands of yen. There was also a bucket of the only food in the room, instant noodles, placed to the side. After pouring hot water from the water heater into the instant noodles and finishing his meal, Qin Ziming stared at the remaining soup in the noodle cup and began to think again. Speaking of which, am I allowed to use demonic abilities now? After all, I possessed a demon. Qin Ziming couldn't help but feel puzzled. Ever since he began to crave blood, he had felt an unusual power within his body, but he didn't know how to use it, or even what the demon was called. Staring at the empty can on the ground, Qin Ziming suddenly froze. He instinctively reached out towards the can, silently chanting in his mind. Receive. The empty can, which had been on the ground, trembled inexplicably a few times, and then, as if drawn by a tremendous suction force, instantly appeared in Qin Ziming's hand. This is... Qin Ziming's pupils contracted, somewhat shocked. He tossed the can into the corner, then aimed his hand again. This time, his outstretched hand slowly closed, and the can in the corner began to dent, fold, and compress as Qin Ziming's hand closed, making a clicking sound. As Qin Ziming clenched his fist, the can was compressed into a thin sheet of metal, as thin as a cicada's wing. Holy crap, control! This scene made his eyes widen in astonishment. Wait a minute, isn't manipulation supposed to include being dominated? Does Makima have that ability? Qin Ziming couldn't help but ponder. He didn't believe that two demons with the same concept could exist in this world, especially one of the four horsemen of the apocalypse. That being said, it reminded him of the war demons in the second film. Humans are afraid of guns, tanks, and bombs, all because they are afraid of war. Therefore, they are all children of war. So manipulation is indeed possible. Let's try to see if we have any other abilities. Qin Ziming shook his head, still somewhat unable to believe that he had actually become Makima's child. It's not so bad, is it? Qin Ziming couldn't help but think of Makima's appearance, and her upright, cough cough. What a pity, that kid Denji got to eat it. Qin Ziming stopped thinking about it and focused his attention on the piece of metal again. This time, he planned to try a different way of controlling it. Qin Ziming simply put his index and middle fingers together. Rise! He silently chanted in his heart, and saw the iron piece slowly fly in the air. Wherever Qin Ziming's finger moved, the iron piece followed. Is this FG not a world of cultivation? This scene left him completely bewildered. Qin Ziming then tried other things and found that he could only manipulate light or small items such as jars and pillows. He couldn't move things like beds or cabinets at all. It's probably because I'm too weak right now. Qin Ziming thought to himself. He walked to the window and looked out at the pitch-black town, where scattered lights flickered in the night, and the distant sound of dogs barking could be faintly heard. In this dangerous world, this room strangely gave him a sense of security. Ugh, why think so much? Time to sleep. Qin Ziming instantly lay down on the bed, turned off the lights, covered himself with the blanket, and fell soundly asleep. Qin Ziming didn't know how long he had slept, but from the street below his building, which should have been quiet, came a kind of sticky, wriggling sound. Qin Ziming suddenly opened his eyes. He had indeed fallen asleep, but his body had already transformed into that of a demon. His vision, acuity, sense of smell, perception, and so on had far surpassed the level of a normal human. Moreover, being of the same kind, it is easy to sense the presence of others of the same kind. Demon. After saying this in a low voice, Qin Ziming carefully got up. Because a considerable amount of time has passed, he doesn't quite remember any of the relevant information from the first part besides the main storyline. But there was one thing he knew. Demons can also devour other demons to become stronger. Qin Ziming slowly drew the curtains, held his breath as much as possible, retreated to a corner of the room, and leaned against the cold wall. At this moment, his heartbeat grew stronger and stronger. He looked around and found that apart from the flattened empty tin can, there were no other decent weapons in the room. A scraping sound gradually came from the exterior wall, slowly but steadily moving upwards. The sound grew closer and clearer. Just passing by, just passing by. Qin Ziming closed his eyes and kept reciting silently. Bang! The window pane shattered instantly, and then a clump of sludge, about the size of a medium-sized dog, wriggling and dripping with slime, slowly crawled in through the window, violently tearing down the curtains and pulling them inside. By the moonlight, Qin Ziming was finally able to make out its facial features. It has 3 asymmetrical eyes that dart around erratically, and a gaping mouth that stretches to its ears, filled with a dense array of spiraling, sharp teeth. As the body slowly slid down the floor, it left a corrosive trail, and white smoke hissed upwards. Chapter 3. How disgusting! What kind of demon is this? Qin Ziming was trembling all over, his teeth chattering uncontrollably, but he still couldn't help but complain. To truly confront the demons of this world without collapsing to the ground on the spot takes courage. Roll! He stood in the corner, mustered his courage, and roared loudly at the demon, trying to intimidate it. The demon paused for a second, but then its gaping mouth widened even further, as if mocking Qin Ziming's overestimation of his abilities. Run! Seeing that things were going badly, Qin Ziming hurriedly ran towards the door, but just as his fingers were about to touch the doorknob. Sizzle! All I could hear was the sound of liquid spraying out from behind me. He instinctively tried to dodge to the side, but it was too late. My left arm was struck instantly, and a searing pain exploded within me, as if my entire arm had been thrown into a pool of sulfuric acid. Ah! Qin Ziming screamed and looked down. From his elbow to his forearm, the flesh on his left arm was melting and carbonizing at a visible rate, revealing the white bone. Blood gushed out, splattering onto the door, the floor, and his own face. My hand? Feeling the warmth on his face, smelling the sticky, metallic scent of blood, and the loss of his left arm. Qin Ziming stood there, eyes wide and face full of disbelief, as if his brain had crashed. The demon remained completely still, its 3 asymmetrical eyes slightly narrowed, as if admiring its masterpiece. Qin Ziming's initial fear of the demon vanished as quickly as the tide receded, replaced by anger and violent emotions that instantly overwhelmed any remaining humanity in him. His vision turned blood red at the edges, and a sharp buzzing sound rang in his ears. The thirst for blood that he had been suppressing could no longer be suppressed. Hungry. It hurts so much. Kill it, drink its blood, live on. Qin Ziming slowly turned around. His left arm hung limply at his side, the end reduced to charred bone fragments and a few strands of tattered muscle. The excruciating pain continued to assault his nerves, but something more powerful had taken over his body. His gaze was fixed on the demon, his amber pupils shining even brighter in the darkness. UBD. Qin Ziming's voice was hoarse as he raised his right hand, spread his 5 fingers, and aimed at the thin sheet of iron on the floor. Take my hand. The metal sheet trembled violently, then with a whoosh, it rose into the air and hovered in front of his palm, its edges gleaming coldly in the moonlight. The demon's 3 eyes widened simultaneously, it seemed to sense the danger and shrank back. Give it back to me! Qin Ziming suddenly roared and swung his hand forward violently. The metal sheet instantly transformed into a silver streak, tearing through the air and piercing straight into the demon's mud-like body. Hiss! The demon's entire body convulsed violently, its mouth gaping open, emitting a shrill sound similar to a tire deflating. It suddenly charged at Qin Ziming, trying to devour him whole. Upon seeing this, Qin Ziming's eyes sharpened, and his fingers quickly gathered, rotated, and stirred in the air. Meanwhile, the piece of iron inside the demon's body spun wildly, cutting and tearing at the demon's internal organs. Hiss! The demon's charge halted instantly, emitting a painful howl. Its body began to expand, contract, and twist uncontrollably, its exterior constantly bulging with bizarre protrusions, only to explode in an instant. Thick, scarlet liquid gushed from countless suddenly bursting wounds, splashing onto the ceiling, walls, floor, and Qin Ziming's entire body. Qin Ziming stood motionless, letting the warm demon's blood splatter on his face and flow down his neck into his collar. At this moment, he was concentrating intently on manipulating the metal plate, while his physical strength was rapidly depleting, and fine beads of cold sweat began to seep from his forehead. 10 seconds. 20 seconds. The demon's writhing grew weaker and weaker, its shrieks turned into feeble gurgling sounds, and finally it fell silent. Qin Ziming's body had reached its limit, and he clenched his fist with all his might. Pfft! With a muffled thud, the demon's body exploded from the inside, splattering blood and unidentifiable fragments of internal organs across half the room, staining the bed crimson. The lump of rotten flesh lay on the floor, its 3 eyes gradually losing their luster, eventually solidifying into a murky, yellowish gelatinous substance. Dead. At this moment, only Qin Ziming's heavy breathing and the dripping sound of liquid from the ceiling could be heard in the room. He looked down at himself, at the unfamiliar version of himself he had become. The left arm was completely empty below the elbow, the cut was charred and carbonized, but no more blood was flowing out. His body, face, and hair were covered in gradually cooling blood and fragments of internal organs, and a stench filled the air. If this were his past life, he would probably have vomited to the point of exhaustion and collapsed to the ground by now. But now, he just stands there numbly, without even a trace of nausea. Is it because I'm a demon now? Qin Ziming was filled with mixed feelings, and a sense of confusion welled up in his heart once again. At that moment, his demonic instincts whispered in his ear once more. Blood. Drink it. As long as you drink blood, you can regenerate, recover. He staggered to the demon's corpse and knelt down, staring at the incredibly crimson blood on the ground, which was gradually congealing, and smelling the thick, metallic stench in the air. Qin Ziming still felt some resistance, but the emptiness of losing his arm and his will to survive overcame his reason. Hands are still more important. After saying that, he stretched out his still movable right hand and scooped up a handful of warm blood. The red liquid swayed slightly in his hand. Qin Ziming closed his eyes, tilted his head back, and gulped it down. Wah! The strong fishy smell made him feel nauseous, but the next second, A hot, warm current came from his stomach and instantly surged to his limbs. A piercing itch came from the severed area of his left arm, and he looked down. At this moment, the charred bone fragments were enveloped by newly formed granulation tissue, and the muscles, blood vessels, and skin extended and reorganized wildly, like plants growing in fast forward. Within seconds, a complete new arm had taken shape, though the skin was still slightly pale. The fingers were flexible, and when clenched, one could even feel the power flowing through the tendons. Ha ha ha! Qin Ziming looked at his regained left hand and made a sound that was hard to tell whether it was laughter or panting. But the joy lasted only a moment. The loud crash of shattering glass, the screams of a demon, and the splashing of liquid were enough to wake everyone in the quiet of the night. At that moment, a commotion could be heard downstairs. One by one, the lights in the vicinity turned on, and footsteps and whispers mingled together. "It's that room on the 3rd floor. Is it a demon? I've already called the police, everyone don't panic." Qin Ziming heard all the noise from the crowd downstairs. His expression changed, and he abruptly stood up. "We can't stay here, we have to run." He didn't want to be in the spotlight right now, especially not because of that woman in Tokyo. Qin Ziming rushed to the wardrobe, pulled out a few relatively clean clothes and stuffed them into a tattered backpack. He then put the tens of thousands of yen into the bag from under the pillow covered in sticky blood. The entire process takes no more than a minute. Slinging his backpack over his shoulder, Qin Ziming rushed towards the door, his hand already almost gripping the doorknob. But at that moment, his body froze. A powerful aura suddenly descended, instantly enveloping him. Qin Ziming's pupils widened instantly. At that moment, he felt short of breath, his mouth felt as if it were sealed shut, his knees went weak, and he even felt as if something was gripping his heart tightly with an invisible hand. "As long as he dares to move an inch, you'll die." This was Qin Ziming's desperate cry from the depths of his heart. What's even more terrifying is that this aura carries an absolute, unquestionable desire for dominance. It's not just announcing its existence, but declaring ownership. This space, this building, this room, and him inside, all belong to the owner of this aura. Chapter 4. Tap, tap, tap. The crisp, steady, and unhurried footsteps came from the corridor outside the door, gradually approaching. Every step felt like it was treading on Qin Ziming's heart. The noise downstairs had completely disappeared at some point, and a deathly silence enveloped the entire apartment building and even the street outside. The footsteps slowly stopped outside his door. "No!" Qin Ziming shouted inwardly. Squeak! The old, rusty iron door hinges, with a smooth, incongruous sound for its age, opened outwards. The dim light from the corridor flowed in through the open door, outlining the silhouette of a tall, well-proportioned woman. She stood in the doorway, backlit, her face blurred, only her golden, round eyes shining with a strange and gentle light in the shadows, calmly watching Qin Ziming inside, who looked like frozen prey, and the mess and demonic corpse behind him. Her aura was gentle, calm, and even carried a strange, inviting sense of closeness. But beneath this calm, Qin Ziming felt an absolute, unquestionable domination. It was as if his own body, blood, heartbeat, breath, and the little bit of control he had just learned were all clearly seen the moment the other person stepped into the room and placed under their absolute control. She tilted her head slightly, her voice soft and pleasant, as if she were making a friendly evening visit. "Good evening, I am Makima, a demon hunter directly under the cabinet." Makima's voice is very gentle, even reassuring. But to Qin Ziming, it was even more terrifying than the demon's howl from before. "Makima, are you kidding me?" Qin Ziming was screaming in despair once again. "It's over, it's all over." He had planned to hold out until things were over on the other side of the power grid before coming out, but now he hadn't even made it out of this small town alive. He wanted to move, to escape, even if it meant jumping out of the 3rd floor window, but his body wouldn't obey him. That invisible pressure, originating from the very essence of life, made him unable to even tremble his fingertips. Most importantly, he didn't dare. Qin Ziming was on the verge of tears, inwardly cursing. How come you've encountered the big boss in less than a day? Are you so bored that you have to personally travel all the way to a demon in a small town? Makima took a step forward, entered the room, and turned on the switch beside her, finally illuminating the room. The light clearly outlined her face. Her medium-length, orange-pink hair had a loose braid hanging down her chest. Her signature round eyes appeared both mysterious and gentle in the dim light. A faint smile played at the corners of her lips, as if what lay before her was not a bloody and horrific massacre scene, but a lost child in need of help. She wore a well-tailored white shirt, a black tie, and black suit trousers, her posture upright and elegant, a stark contrast to the dirty, dilapidated little room. As Makima entered the room, the oppressive aura that had been suffocating suddenly vanished. Qin Ziming immediately assumed a wary stance, leaning against the wall with his eyes fixed on Makima. "Don't be nervous, child." Makima sensed his wariness, but still spoke gently. "I happened to be passing through here on a business trip. I received a report that there were demons lurking around, so I came to check it out. What's your name?" Qin Ziming." Qin Ziming hesitated for a moment, but still spoke up. Makima's gaze swept over the demon's corpse on the ground and the bloodstains all over the room, then fell on the bloodstains on Qin Ziming's body and his slightly pale left hand, and she asked softly, "Did you take care of this demon?" Qin Ziming glanced into her eyes, then quickly looked away, swallowed hard, and said nervously, "It attacked me first." Makima nodded, walked briskly to the demon's corpse, and crouched down to examine it. The lump of rotten flesh had begun to congeal and emitted a pungent odor, but there was no trace of disgust on her face. The mud demon isn't particularly strong offensively, but it's highly corrosive. Most people would have a hard time surviving an encounter with it. She stood up, then turned to Qin Ziming, a hint of inquiry in her round eyes. "But you look like just an ordinary teenager, how did you kill it?" Qin Ziming's heart tightened. "I can't exactly tell you. I'm from another time and turned into a demon, can I? I'm lucky." He pretended to stammer as he said. "When it attacked me, I happened to touch a piece of sheet metal, so I threw it at it, but unexpectedly, the piece of metal started moving on its own." Makima looked at him quietly without saying a word, but her gentle gaze made Qin Ziming feel as if his lies had been seen through, and cold sweat broke out on his back. After a few seconds, Makima smiled slightly and said, "Luck is also a kind of strength, but, in this world, you can't survive long on luck alone." "What does this mean?" Qin Ziming felt a pang of panic. He didn't know what she wanted to do. Was she going to kill him, or did she have some other plan? Makima glanced around the room again and said to Qin Ziming, "It's too chaotic here. The police and sanitation workers will be here soon. You're covered in blood. Let's get out of here first." Qin Ziming was stunned. He hadn't expected her to say that. He wanted to refuse, but when he thought of Makima's abilities, he didn't dare to directly resist. If he goes with her, he might be controlled, or even lose his life, but, if he doesn't go with her, he might die here immediately. Sigh, there's really no choice. Qin Ziming sighed inwardly. Good. He spoke in a dry voice. A wise choice. Makima's smile deepened, and she turned and walked towards the door. Come with me. Qin Ziming followed closely behind her, his eyes fixed on her back. Her orange-pink hair swayed gently with each step, her back ramrod straight, as if she were walking through a pristine palace, even in a dusty and stained stairwell. He also noticed that the neighbor's house, which had been lit up just moments before, now had its doors and windows tightly shut, not even a crack, as if the people inside were holding their breath, afraid to make the slightest sound. The entire building was quiet, with only the sound of their footsteps echoing in the hallway. Qin Ziming could clearly smell the faint perfume on Makima. Actually, Makima is quite pitiful too. He couldn't help but sigh inwardly. When I read comics before, I was also angry about the behavior of this villain who was called a bad woman by everyone. But as he grew older and watched the second part, he realized that this bad woman was actually just a woman who wanted an equal embrace deep down, it's just that her abilities, her nature, and her methods were wrong. Chapter 5. When Qin Ziming reached the entrance on the first floor, he noticed several police officers in black uniforms standing on the street outside. As soon as they saw Makima come out, they immediately bowed their heads respectfully. "It's been cleaned up, thank you for your hard work." Makima gave the order calmly. "Yes, Miss Makima." The group immediately responded in unison, their eyes filled with awe, and none of them dared to look at Qin Ziming even twice. Makima nodded slightly, then walked straight to a black sedan parked by the roadside. The car door opened automatically, and she leaned over to get into the driver's seat, then looked at Qin Ziming, who was still standing there in a daze. "Get in the car." Qin Ziming hesitated for a moment, then opened the car door and sat in the passenger seat. The car's interior was simply yet luxurious, but he had no interest in looking at it at the moment. The car started smoothly, and the night view of Kurosaki town outside the window slowly receded in the lights. The carriage fell silent for a moment, with only the deep rumble of the engine. Qin Ziming sat rather stiffly, his hands resting on his knees. He secretly glanced at Makima through the rear-view mirror. She was focused on driving, her eyes fixed on the streets flowing with the night sky ahead. In the dim light, those round eyes seemed to conceal a constantly spinning maze. Qin Ziming quickly looked away. "It's so beautiful," he thought to himself silently, feeling a little shy. Makima, however, had already noticed his odd behavior in the rear-view mirror. "What's wrong?" "No, it's nothing." Qin Ziming quickly changed the subject. "Where are we going?" Makima didn't answer immediately, she tilted her head slightly, her gaze falling on him. "Tokyo." Her tone remained gentle. "Your ability is quite interesting. Although it's still weak, manipulation and domination are very similar in nature." Qin Ziming felt a chill run down his spine after hearing this. "I don't know what you're talking about." Makima chuckled softly. "It doesn't matter," she continued. "Fear is normal fear of unknown forces, fear of change within oneself, fear of this world." Her fingers tapped lightly on the steering wheel, the rhythm steady. "But fear can be manipulated and exploited. Compared to being eaten by an unknown demon in a small place like Kurosakicho, or being mistakenly killed by a passing demon hunter, by following me, you'll at least live with some understanding." The car had now left the town, and the street lights on both sides of the road were gradually thinning out. Makima switched to high beams and continued to stare ahead, no longer speaking. Qin Ziming also fell silent. Makima was right, in this world, he knew almost nothing except for the main storyline. Alone, with no clue about his own power, and constantly facing unfamiliar demons or demon hunters, the odds of survival are probably much lower than if he were with this bad woman by his side. Besides, he has no way to escape now. "Why me?" Qin Ziming asked in a low voice. "Is it just because I'm a demon?" "That's part of the reason," Makima answered calmly. "More importantly, I sensed something special about you." Qin Ziming's heart sank. Could it be that they detected it by smell? Of course, he dared not say it aloud. "After arriving in Tokyo, where exactly are we going?" he asked again, though he already had a pretty good idea of the answer. "I'm in charge of the 4th Special Exorcism Division of the Public Security Bureau. I will provide you with proper identification, accommodation, and compensation." Makima paused, then looked at him with a deep gaze. "The condition is that you must obey my orders, hunt down demons, and protect the people. Can you do that?" As soon as he finished speaking, an invisible pressure suddenly enveloped Qin Ziming. "Able." He spoke with some difficulty. The pressure dissipated immediately. Makima withdrew her gaze with satisfaction and looked ahead again. Oh no, could this be some kind of contract? Will I become a mindless tool afterward? Qin Ziming cried out in his heart, but he was at a loss for what to do. If you don't have enough strength, you might as well obediently lie down and be a dog when you encounter Makima. Life punched me hard, but I never expected I'd be an ace fan. He wailed silently in his heart. The car continued moving. Due to prolonged mental stress and exhaustion from fighting the demons, Qin Ziming's physical strength was already completely depleted. He leaned against the car window, his vision gradually blurring, his eyelids growing heavier and heavier. No. Qin Ziming suddenly raised his face and slapped his cheeks. Go to sleep. Makima's gentle voice came through, its warmth carrying an undeniable calmness. There's still a long way to go to Tokyo, take a good rest. The voice seemed to carry some kind of power, and Qin Ziming's eyelids closed completely, sinking into darkness. After an unknown amount of time, a sudden jolt woke Qin Ziming. He opened his eyes and found himself covered with a black suit jacket, which emitted a faint scent of Makima. The car had entered the city. Outside the window were dense, somewhat old high-rise buildings, neon signs flashing incessantly in the night, and very few pedestrians on the street. Qin Ziming sat up straight, folded his coat and placed it aside, and said in a low voice. Thanks. Makima turned her head to look at him. How are you feeling? Fine. He moved his left arm, and the color of his left arm had returned to normal. The car turned onto a quiet street, and a magnificent administrative building came into view. This is the Devil Hunter headquarters. It's not even drawn in this detail in the manga. He gazed at the building, silently marveling at its grandeur. We've arrived. Makima stopped the car by the roadside, opened the door, and got out. Qin Ziming quickly followed. Hiss, it's so cold. As soon as he got out of the car, a cold wind carrying the night air rushed towards him. He was still covered in dried blood, and he couldn't help but hug his shoulders and shiver. Makima had already walked up the steps, and the door opened automatically. She turned to look at Qin Ziming. Welcome to the Public Security Bureau's Special Exorcism Division 4. A very faint smile curved her lips. This is also where you'll be staying from now on. Qin Ziming looked at her, took a deep breath, and followed. The door closed silently behind me, shutting out the cold air. The hall was lit only by night lights, the light was quiet and serene. Makima, walking in front, had the orange-red ends of her hair swaying gently with her steps in the light, her figure elegant and poised. So beautiful. Qin Ziming unconsciously began to mutter to himself again. Hearing the noise, Makima turned around with a hint of confusion. Cough, it's nothing, it's nothing. Qin Ziming quickly pretended to cough and looked away. Makima didn't ask any further questions, turned around and pressed the elevator button. Ding! The elevator doors opened, and the two entered one after the other. They pressed the button for the 6th floor, and the elevator began to ascend. Makima gazed at the floor display and said gently. You can rest here tonight. I'll have someone prepare your police identification and relevant documents tomorrow. Okay. Qin Ziming immediately responded. The elevator stopped on the 6th floor. The door opened, and Makima went out first, stopping in front of a door opposite that had a sign that read Office. She took a magnetic card out of her pocket and swiped it lightly on the sensor. Click. The door opened with a click. This is my temporary room. You'll stay here tonight. There's a bathroom to wash up, and a new police uniform is in the closet. Qin Ziming entered the room. The room is about 20 square meters and simply furnished, with a single bed, a desk, a chair, and a wardrobe, and includes a private bathroom. Well then, see you tomorrow, Qin Jun. Makima raised her golden, round eyes and looked at Qin Ziming gently. Qin Ziming looked at Makima and swallowed hard. Okay. Makima then turned and left, her footsteps fading into the distance. Only after all the sound stopped did Qin Ziming close the door and let out a long breath. Why do I feel so much pressure even though your tone is so gentle? He looked down at his palms, as if talking to himself. Knowing too much isn't always a good thing. Chapter 6. Let's take a shower first. Qin Ziming shook off his thoughts, pushed open the bathroom door, and went inside. Oh right, I also need to change my clothes. He suddenly remembered something, turned around, walked to the wardrobe, and took out a police uniform. White shirt, black tie, black suit trousers. Isn't this the same outfit Makima is wearing? Qin Ziming was a little helpless, he remembered there should have been a black suit as well. Oh well, I'll just have to make do with these. There's nothing else I can do. He took off all his clothes and threw them into the trash can, then walked naked into the bathroom. After taking a shower, Qin Ziming changed into his uniform and stood in front of the mirror. Not bad at all. He examined himself in the mirror, a hint of smugness in his eyes. Clothes really do make the man, and a saddle makes the horse. Stepping out of the bathroom, Qin Ziming went to the window by the bed, gazing at the endless city silhouettes in the darkness, his thoughts once again resurfacing. I still don't know where the plot is at, or if Denji has joined the Public Security Bureau. Fragments of memory flashed before his eyes. Now that I'm here, perhaps I can try to change something. But, can I really do it? Ugh, I'm so tired. I'll think about it tomorrow. Qin Ziming lay down on the bed, but he felt a void in his heart, as if he had forgotten something. Hey? Where's my bag? He finally remembered. The next morning. Bang, bang bang. A knock on the door startled Qin Ziming awake from his sleep. Who is it? He got up groggily and opened the door. Standing outside the door was a tall, upright young man in a black uniform with a small braid tied behind his head. You're the new demon hunter Miss Makima mentioned who joined Section 4. The other person asked in a calm tone. Hayakawa Aki. Upon seeing that familiar face, Qin Ziming was startled, and all sleepiness vanished instantly. Ah, yes. He quickly answered. I am Hayakawa Aki, the vice-captain of the 4th Division. Hayakawa Aki stared at Qin Ziming and gave a brief self-introduction. I am Qin Ziming. Qin Ziming scratched the back of his head, the scene was somewhat awkward. Hayakawa Aki ignored him, turned around, opened the door to the office opposite, and said. Miss Makima will be here shortly. She asked me to have you wait for her here. Oh. Qin Ziming nodded in agreement and quickly followed Hayakawa Aki into the office. Facing the main entrance is a huge floor-to-ceiling window, flanked by tall bookshelves filled with books and documents. A desk and a chair were placed in the center of the floor-to-ceiling window. It's pretty much the same as in the comics. Qin Ziming thought to himself. Hayakawa Aki stopped in front of the desk, stood still with her hands behind her back. Qin Ziming stood to the side, quietly observing him. Hayakawa Aki, the man who will die in the most tragic way in the future. Qin Ziming pondered silently, his gaze shifting to the long sword on his back. A pact has been made with a cursed demon, each use will drastically shorten one's lifespan. Denji hasn't appeared with him yet, the current timeline should be before Denji's appearance. Qin Ziming lowered his head, silently pondering the matter. Just then, the sound of footsteps approached. Qin Ziming looked up at the doorway, and Hayakawa Aki turned around. The footsteps stopped outside the door. Good morning, Hayakawa-kun, and Hata-kun. Makima appeared at the entrance with a smile on her face. Good morning, Miss Makima. Qin Ziming and Hayakawa Aki answered together. Makima nodded, walked behind the desk and sat down, placing her hands folded on the table and resting her chin on them. She looked at Qin Ziming and said gently. Did you sleep well last night, Qin Jun? Qin Ziming immediately stood up straight. I slept very well, thank you for your concern, Miss Makima. That's good. Makima nodded slightly, her gaze falling on the uniform he was wearing. The police uniform suits you very well. It's all right. Qin Ziming sensed that her words seemed to have another meaning, and responded vaguely. Makima was still smiling as she looked at Hayakawa Aki. Hayakawa-kun, I'd like to have Qin-kun join your team. What do you think? Hayakawa Aki frowned upon hearing this. Miss Makima, is there anything special about him? Why was he added to Section 4? Makima seemed to have been prepared, explaining calmly. Hayakawa-kun, as you know, Section 4 is an experimental unit that I specially requested to establish. She paused, then turned her gaze back to Qin Ziming. And he is a demon who retains human consciousness and reason. A demon. Hayakawa Aki's eyes narrowed as she glanced at Qin Ziming standing to the side. Well. Sensing the subtle hostility emanating from Hayakawa Aki, Qin Ziming raised his hand and rubbed his lips, feeling somewhat uneasy. But there was nothing he could do, Hayakawa Aki was now filled with hatred for demons. That's why I let him join your team. After all, it's dangerous to let such a special demon roam freely outside. Makima continued. I understand, do you want me to monitor him? Hayakawa Aki understood, and her gaze fell on Qin Ziming once again. Makima nodded gently. That's right. If he intends to escape, or harms humans, you can treat him as a demon. These words sent a chill down Qin Ziming's spine. Damn it, so I've been turned into livestock. He cursed inwardly. Okay, Miss Makima. Hayakawa Aki immediately agreed. Makima then took out a police ID from the drawer and placed it on the table. This is Mr. Qin's identification. Next, I'll trouble Mr. Hayakawa to show him around the patrol area and the relevant procedures. Hayakawa Aki picked up the ID and casually tossed it to Qin Ziming. Hey? Can't you be a little gentler? Qin Ziming hurriedly caught it, stuffed it into his pocket, and complained softly. Hayakawa Aki said in a cold tone. You have no right to complain, just follow me. After saying that, he walked straight towards the door. Depend on. Qin Ziming cursed under his breath, but still quickly followed. Before leaving, he glanced at Makima out of the corner of his eye. She remained smiling, silent, her deep gaze fixed quietly on Qin Ziming. Hiss. Qin Ziming felt as if he were being watched by something. They went downstairs, left the Devil Hunter headquarters, and walked one after the other on the streets of Tokyo. Silence reigned throughout. This guy, I never thought he was so difficult to get along with when I was reading the comics. Qin Ziming watched Hayakawa Aki's retreating figure, his lips twitching slightly. He simply couldn't stand the atmosphere. Hayakawa Aki. Call him senior. Hayakawa Akito also did not return to smash him. Hayakawa-senpai. Qin Ziming was speechless for a moment, but still changed his mind. Hayakawa Aki stopped and turned to look at him, her expression calm. What's the matter? Qin Ziming scratched the back of his head. He hadn't really thought about what to ask, he just wanted to break the silence. Why did Hayakawa-senpai become a devil hunter? He asked a question casually. This is none of your business. Focus on patrolling with me and familiarizing yourself with the area. Hayakawa Aki did not answer, and turned to continue walking forward. Okay, although I already knew the reason. Qin Ziming helplessly shrugged, muttered something under his breath, and quickly followed Hayakawa Aki's footsteps. Chapter 7. Hayakawa Aki led Qin Ziming through the streets of Tokyo, their steps regular yet swift. He would occasionally point out concise reports of unusual phenomena in a particular area, or locations where demonic attacks had occurred, in a flat tone, devoid of any extra emotion. The midday sun was so hot that Qin Ziming was sweating profusely, and his legs were almost too weak to walk. Looking at Hayakawa Aki, who still seemed unaffected, he couldn't help but curse inwardly. Damn it, if you don't rest, I do. Just as he was complaining, Hayakawa Aki's communicator, which was attached to his collar, emitted a series of rapid static sounds. This is lesson 4. Hayakawa Aki, please begin. Vice Captain Hayakawa, a citizen has reported seeing a suspicious creature in the former factory area of Sujinami Ward, 3 Chome. The creature was accompanied by mirror debris and a strong stench, leading to speculation that it might be a mirror demon. Please go to the nearest location to confirm and handle the situation. Receive. Hayakawa Aki responded, then cut off the communication and turned her gaze to Qin Ziming. A demon has appeared in the old factory area of Sujinami Ward 3 Chome. Follow me. Without offering any further explanation, he turned and sped off in the direction mentioned in the communication. I heard it without you having to say it. Qin Ziming silently rolled his eyes, his senses were far more heightened than ever before, but he still quickly followed. The old factory area was filled with a sense of desolation, rusty steel skeletons pierced the grey sky, and broken windows looked like empty eyes. The closer they got to the target location, the stronger the cloying, rotten smell in the air became, and they could faintly hear intermittent whispers, as if many people were talking at the same time. There. Hayakawa Aki stopped outside an abandoned workshop and pointed to a half-open, giant sliding door corroded by rust. Qin Ziming also sensed a disgusting feeling, like the nausea one gets from eating shards of broken mirror. He peered into the room, where the light was dim and he could vaguely make out piles of clutter and a distorted shadow. Go in and take care of it. Qin Ziming was taken aback. Hey? Me? Alone? Otherwise what? Hayakawa Aki leaned against the crumbling bricks of the factory's outer wall, took out a pack of cigarettes from his pocket, lit one, and moved unhurriedly. Miss Makima, you've been put into the 4th division, you should be of some use. Let me see your demonic abilities. His eyes were clear. Sigh, okay. Qin Ziming sighed, then slowly walked towards the workshop. To be honest, he was still a little apprehensive about facing the demon. Last time, his survival instinct completely overcame his fear. But he also knew that Hayakawa Aki wouldn't make a move easily, and he had to prove his worth through this real battle, or rather, prove that he wasn't a waste. Qin Ziming stepped into the workshop. In the dim light, the demon revealed its form. It resembled a twisted human figure pieced together from countless rotten strips of cloth, a sticky black oily substance, and reflective shards of mirror, standing approximately 2 meters tall. A fissure opened in the center of its body, constantly opening and closing, emitting a dizzying whisper. It had no eyes, but Qin Ziming could feel countless gazes locking onto him from every part of its body. Humans? No. Demons. The mirror demon uttered indistinct sounds, first of doubt, then turning into greed and excitement. The next second, its strips of cloth-like arms suddenly stretched out, lashing out at Qin Ziming like whips, the sound of them tearing through the air sharp and piercing. Grass. Qin Ziming rolled awkwardly to the side, leaving several deep cracks in the concrete ground where he had been standing. We need to find some weapons. He looked around and saw several rusty steel pipes scattered on the ground. Raise your right hand and aim, Qin Ziming concentrates and shouts. Stand up. The iron pipes trembled, barely floating, and shot crookedly towards the demon. The oily substance on the demon's body kept wriggling, easily flicking the iron pipe away with a clanging sound of metal colliding. The attack was almost entirely ineffective and instead enraged it. More strips of cloth tentacles burst forth from its body, like a giant predatory net closing in on Qin Ziming. Qin Ziming jumped backward instantly. What's the point of playing this game? Having barely escaped death, Qin Ziming cursed through gritted teeth. He's already struggling to control even a few steel pipes, let alone break through this demon's skin. How is he supposed to fight it? The devil's whispers suddenly became sharp and piercing, as if countless needles were stabbing into Qin Ziming's mind. Hiss! Qin Ziming instinctively covered his ears, and the demon seized the opportunity to attack with another tentacle. Qin Ziming quickly rolled away again, but the tentacle still grazed his arm, instantly cutting a gash from which blood gushed out. It hurts. The pain actually calmed Qin Ziming down a bit. He tried to manipulate the larger object as he had manipulated the steel pipe before, but when he focused his mind, he only felt a sharp headache and a sense of blockage. Damn, we can't go head to head, we need to find another way. While dodging attacks, Qin Ziming scanned the dimly lit workshop. Rusty iron frames, scattered bricks, broken wooden crates, tangled wires. Suddenly, Qin Ziming looked at the mirror shards on the mirror demon and a flash of inspiration struck him. You have items on you too, right? Qin Ziming focused his mind again, attempting to directly manipulate the fragments to tear it apart from the inside. Ugh! The demon let out a painful roar, and several smaller shards of mirror were indeed pulled from its viscous surface, bringing with them a thick, black liquid. But the deeper, larger fragments only wobbled a few times and did not break free. This damage was negligible. The demon's several strips of cloth suddenly twisted into a thicker, sharper spear, which stabbed towards Qin Ziming's chest with astonishing speed. We're doomed. Qin Ziming's pupils contracted, and almost instinctively he pushed his control abilities to the limit. He hurriedly manipulated an L-shaped iron frame hanging in midair above the workshop. The frame was heavily corroded and connected to part of the factory roof. The iron frame was about the size of a door panel, which was the limit of his current capabilities. Get down here! Boom! He yanked the iron frame, along with a large piece of brittle asbestos tile and sheet metal attached to it, down and instantly used it to block the view in front of him. Pfft! The demon's strip of cloth spear pierced deep into the collapsed iron frame and debris, penetrating the sheet metal, but its power was largely reduced. However, the immense impact still sent Qin Ziming and his shield sliding backward, their feet leaving tracks in the ground. Forehead. His throat tasted sweet again, but at least he wasn't stabbed through. The demon angrily withdrew its tentacles, intending to attack again. Taking advantage of this brief moment, Qin Ziming, enduring the dull pain in his chest, frantically spread his attention, covering all the scattered objects within a radius of several meters on the ground in front of him. Broken bricks, shattered glass, rusty bolts and nuts, even tangled clumps of scrap metal. Get up! All of you, get up! As he exerted his mental power, dozens of miscellaneous objects of various sizes hummed and floated up. Although each one was light, they made quite a show when gathered together. He pushed forward with both hands, and a torrential downpour of debris rained down on the demon. Clang! Clang! Puff! Puff! The attack still failed to inflict fatal damage, but it successfully disrupted the mirror demon's perception and movements. Under Qin Ziming's deliberate guidance, several sharp pieces of glass pierced the area where it had been previously injured. Roar! The demon roared in frustration and waved its tentacles to block. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Qin Ziming abandoned controlling all the miscellaneous items, concentrated his last bit of energy, and aimed at an overturned, oil-stained empty metal lubricant container not far from the demon's side. At the same time, he exerted force with his feet and charged straight towards the demon in a suicidal manner. Die! A muffled sound emerged from the demon's fissure, and several tentacles swiftly stabbed towards Qin Ziming, who was lunging at them. Just as the tentacles were about to touch him, Qin Ziming roared and made a throwing motion with all his might. He maneuvered the heavy empty oil drum at an extremely high speed, crashing sideways into the demon's rear side, into a cracked, rickety brick support structure. Bang! Crash! The already fragile support collapsed completely, causing a small section of the workshop ceiling and the heavy ventilation ducts above it to break and crash down. Qin Ziming himself was tightly bound around the waist and thighs by two strips of cloth tentacles, the sharp parts piercing his flesh, and a sharp pain instantly shot through him. But a smug smile appeared on his face. Hehe, you fell for it, didn't you? The mirror demon sensed the shadow above its head and the loud noise, and instinctively tried to move to dodge, but its entanglement with Qin Ziming slightly slowed its movements. But in that brief moment of hesitation, the broken ventilation duct and concrete blocks, mixed with countless pebbles and dust, slammed heavily onto most of the demon's body like divine punishment. Boom! Smoke and dust filled the air. Gah! The demon let out a crushed, agonizing scream that abruptly stopped. The tentacles that had been binding Qin Ziming instantly lost their strength and collapsed. Puff! Qin Ziming was also affected by the aftershocks of the collapse. Several smaller pieces of rubble hit him, and combined with his previous injuries, he suddenly coughed up blood, collapsed to the ground, and his vision went black. The smoke and dust settled slowly. The mirror demon's body was mostly buried under the rubble, with only some twisted tentacles and part of its torso exposed. The tentacles twitched slightly, and its breath was extremely weak, but it was not completely dead. Qin Ziming struggled, using his elbows to support his body as he crawled forward. His mouth was filled with the taste of blood, and his vision was blurred due to blood loss and exhaustion. It could even feel the wounds pierced by the tentacles slowly oozing blood, and its power constantly draining away. Qin Ziming crawled to the side of the demon's remains and saw the ruptured wound from which dark, viscous blood was gushing out. The smell of rust and decay now carried a deadly allure. Ugh, I have to drink this disgusting blood again. Qin Ziming said with a hint of self-deprecation, but there was no hesitation in his eyes. Driven by the will to survive, he suddenly lowered his head, brought his mouth close to the filthy wound, and began to suck on it fiercely. Gurgle, woo. An indescribable stench and the sensation of shattered mirror filled his mouth, but what followed was a surging, violent heat that rushed down his throat and into every part of Qin Ziming's body. The stab wounds on his waist and legs stopped bleeding, contracted, and healed at a visible speed. The pain from the broken bone quickly subsided, and the depleted strength began to recover rapidly. There was even a strange, slightly destructive power surging within my veins. The wound on his back was also itchy and healing. The demon's remains beneath their feet, as their blood was drained, ceased their final twitches and completely dissolved into a pool of lifeless corpse. Ha ha! Qin Ziming leaned against the corpse, raising his head and panting heavily, thick, dark blood still clinging to the corner of his mouth. He felt an unprecedented sense of fulfillment, but it was also accompanied by a subtle, lingering hunger for blood and violence. I still need to restrain myself. He shook his head vigorously, trying to dispel the uncomfortable feeling. Steady footsteps could be heard outside the workshop. Hayakawa slowly walked in, his gaze sweeping over the chaotic collapsed area, the pile of demonic remains, before finally landing on Qin Ziming, who was covered in dust and blood, with traces of strange color still lingering at the corners of his mouth, but whose injuries had mostly healed. His gaze was calm and unwavering, revealing neither approval nor dislike. He simply lingered on Qin Ziming for a couple more seconds, especially on his rapidly healing wounds. So he really is a demon. Hayakawa said something in a low voice, then pressed the communicator. Old factory in 3 Chome, Tsuchinami Ward, the evil has been eliminated, but the site needs to be cleaned up. After speaking, Hayakawa walked up to Qin Ziming and extended her hand to him. Can you still get up? Qin Ziming glanced at Hayakawa, grasped the outstretched hand in his right hand, and used it to stand up. Able. Qin Ziming said weakly. Although still a bit weak, you did a good job. Hayakawa responded calmly, but his gaze towards Qin Ziming lacked some of its previous aloofness. Chapter 8. Thanks. Qin Ziming responded politely, also feeling quite weak himself. Why was Denji so arrogant at first? Was it because I couldn't transform? Qin Ziming silently complained to himself. Just then, the sound of police sirens came from outside. You rest here for a while, I'll handle the rest. Hayakawa gave Qin Ziming the instructions, and then walked outside. Looking at Hayakawa, who was negotiating with the police outside the door, Qin Ziming turned his head and looked at the remaining cloth tentacles of the mirror demon. I can control parts of a demon, that. He had a bold idea in his mind. Qin Ziming raised his right hand and aimed it at the tentacle. Rise! He thought to himself in a low voice. The tentacle actually trembled slightly, then rose a little, but quickly fell back down. Ha! Qin Ziming was panting heavily, but his expression was one of excitement. Ha ha ha, it really can be controlled. Does that mean, once I become stronger, I can control even demons, or anything else? Upon hearing this, Qin Ziming was reminded of Makima's abilities. So similar, too similar. Qin Ziming felt a chill run down his spine, unsure if it was because he wasn't controlling any living creatures. If I could also manipulate thoughts, then I would be on par with dominating. He shook his head, deciding not to think about it anymore. Hayakawa's conversation had ended, and he walked in, looking at Qin Ziming and saying, "Today's patrol is over. I'll take you back to headquarters to report on today's situation." Okay. Qin Ziming nodded, and then he followed Hayakawa into a police car and returned. It was around 4 p.m. when I returned to the Demon Hunter headquarters building. The setting sun cast a warm orange hue around the cold concrete building, but it couldn't conceal the weariness and bloody stench emanating from Qin Ziming. His uniform was almost completely torn, covered in dust and dried dark bloodstains. Although his injuries had healed, the mental and physical exhaustion he had suffered was real. Hayakawa walked steadily toward the elevator, pressed the button for the 6th floor, and Qin Ziming followed closely behind. The slight feeling of weightlessness as the elevator ascended made Qin Ziming feel a little dazed. 6th floor, outside Makima's office. The door was ajar. Hayakawa knocked twice and then pushed it open. Makima was standing in front of the huge floor-to-ceiling window, her back to the door, holding a document in her hand, seemingly reading it, or perhaps looking down at the city's twilight scenery. Upon hearing the voice, she turned around, her face still bearing that signature gentle yet enigmatic smile. "Thank you for your hard work, Hayakawa-kun and Hata-kun." Her gaze lingered on Qin Ziming's disheveled appearance for a moment, and her smile seemed to deepen slightly. "Looks like today's work won't be easy. Miss Makima." Hayakawa bowed slightly and succinctly reported on the day's events. In the former factory area of Sujinami Ward 3 Chome, a demon was discovered and eliminated. Qin Ziming single-handedly carried out the kill, demonstrating his ability to manipulate objects and heal himself by consuming demon blood. His report was objective and unemotional, as if he were reading a standard report. "Did you complete it independently?" Makima gently placed the file on the desk, walked up to Qin Ziming, and tilted her head slightly to look him over. "That's truly astonishing, Qin Jun. To achieve this level on your first official mission, are you injured? Although you look..." Her gaze swept over the healed wound beneath Qin Ziming's tattered clothes. "It seems like everything is all right now." Qin Ziming felt a little uncomfortable under her gaze, and forced himself to stand up straight, saying, "Thank you for your concern, Miss Makima. I'm fine." Makima's smile remained unchanged. "That's good. It seems Qin Jun has proven his worth and that my plan was correct." She walked back to her desk, opened a drawer, and took out a slightly thick brown paper envelope. "This is your reward for your first mission, and some compensation." Makima handed the envelope to Qin Ziming, who took it. "Compensate?" He looked at Makima with some confusion. "I had someone dispose of the backpack you left in the car," Makima said in a calm tone. "The clothes inside were stained with blood and other stains, so there was no need to keep them. I took the liberty of throwing them away. As for the tens of thousands of yen in cash..." She paused, and Qin Ziming's heart jumped. That was all his savings. "The banknotes are stained with blood, using them directly might attract unnecessary attention or trouble. Makima continued, her voice gentle and pleasant. So I had them exchanged for an equivalent amount of new banknotes and put them in there. Count them, are they correct? Qin Ziming immediately opened the envelope. Inside were several brand new 10,000 yuan bills and some change. He roughly counted them, and adding them to his original amount, the total was quite considerable, far exceeding his expectations for a beginner's mission. Yes. Absolutely. Thank you, Miss Makima. Qin Ziming immediately smiled, his fatigue fading considerably. Clutching the envelope, he felt his back straighten a bit. Finally, I'm not poor anymore. This is what he was thinking at that moment. You deserve it. Makima sat back in her chair, placing her hands crossed on the table. However, Qin Jun, although you now have an income, accommodation is still a problem. Living at headquarters long-term is not appropriate. She looked at Hayakawa Aki. Hayakawa-kun, I remember the room next to your apartment is currently empty. Hayakawa Akira's brows furrowed almost imperceptibly, but she still nodded in response. Yes. Then I'll have to trouble you. Makima's smile seemed flawless. Let Qin-kun live next door to you. That way, it'll be easier for you to supervise him daily, and it'll also help him adapt to life and the environment here more quickly. The rent can be deducted from his wages. Hayakawa-kun, is that all right? Hayakawa Aki was silent for 2 seconds, her voice devoid of emotion. Understood, I will handle it, Miss Makima. Well then, you two have had a long day. Hayakawa-kun, please take Qin-kun to his quarters. Makima gently gestured for him to leave, then picked up the documents on the table again. Yes. The two responded together. Even after leaving the office, Qin Ziming was still basking in the joy of receiving a huge sum of money, but soon reality dealt him a heavy blow. Hayakawa Aki led him directly to a nearby apartment building that looked a bit old. After going up to the 3rd floor, Hayakawa Aki contacted the phone number posted on the door of his next-door apartment, 304. Soon after, the landlord arrived. He was a middle-aged man wearing reading glasses and looking quite shrewd. Hayakawa Aki politely said to him. Hello, this is my new colleague. They need to rent this room. How much is the rent? The landlord seemed to know Hayakawa Aki and was somewhat wary of his police officer status, so he didn't ask any further questions and simply quoted a price. Monthly rent of 20,000. How many? Upon hearing this, Qin Ziming immediately cried out. Chapter 9. Are rents in Tokyo really that expensive? This seemingly ordinary apartment is reducing the thickness of his newly earned cash by 1/6. This was back in 1997. He could almost hear his wallet's mournful cry. Could you? Qin Ziming tried to negotiate the price. The landlord adjusted his glasses, said nothing, and looked at Hayakawa Aki. Hayakawa Akira stared at Qin Ziming expressionlessly. Okay, I'll rent it. Qin Ziming reluctantly pulled out the banknotes, counted them out, and gave them to the landlord. The moment he received the keys, they felt like they were burning his hands. It's so expensive. Opening the door to room 304, Qin Ziming surveyed the interior space. The room was more spacious than he had imagined. A typical Japanese apartment layout, with 2 bedrooms, a living room, a small kitchen, a separate bathroom, and a balcony. Although the furniture consisted of only the most basic elements: a bed, table, chairs, a bedside table, an empty wardrobe, and a refrigerator, it was fairly clean, and the sunlight streaming in through the balcony made it quite bright. At least it's still big. Qin Ziming comforted himself, at least it's much better than before. Hayakawa Akino turned and went back to his room 303. A moment later, he came back with a set of neatly folded clothes, a plain dark grey tracksuit. He placed the clothes on the empty table. Your uniform is unwearable. Use mine for now, and you can get a new one from headquarters when you have time. Thanks. Qin Ziming looked at Hayakawa Aki and thanked her. Hayakawa Aki didn't say anything, just nodded, then went back to her room and closed the door. Ah, Hayakawa Aki. Qin Ziming hadn't expected him to accept him so quickly. Or was this just how he always was? After taking a nice, hot shower that washed away much of the grime and fatigue from the battle, he changed into the loungewear that Hayakawa Aki had given him. Although it was a little big, it was soft and clean, with a faint scent of detergent, which helped him relax a bit. As Qin Ziming dried his hair and walked into the empty living room, his stomach started growling uncontrollably. Oh, I'm so hungry. The battle and recovery had taken a huge toll, and he was already starving. Qin Ziming opened the refrigerator, and sure enough, it was empty, with only a blast of cold air hitting him. We need to get something to eat. Qin Ziming touched the remaining money and sighed. But thinking about the adventures and gains of the day, I felt I had to treat myself. A thought suddenly popped into his mind. Hot pot. Hot pot is piping hot, quickly replenishes energy, and allows you to enjoy a variety of ingredients. In this unfamiliar place, perhaps only the taste of familiar food could bring him a little comfort. Without hesitation, Qin Ziming put all the money in the bedside table and went downstairs with only the change. After wandering around the neighborhood, he was lucky enough to find a small local market. Although it was nearing evening, some stalls were still open. Auntie, how much is this cabbage? Uncle, could you please slice the beef thinner for me? Thank you. Eggs, I'd like a carton too. Do you have tofu? Ah, this kind will do. Shiitake mushrooms, enoki mushrooms. No hot pot base? Well, this Japanese soy sauce broth will do, and I'll buy some chili peppers too. A little bit of scallions, ginger, and garlic. Qin Ziming weaved between several stalls, awkwardly haggling over prices. The vegetable vendor, seeing that he was a stranger and a young man, initially insisted on a fixed price. Young man, this price is very fair. Auntie, could you give me a discount? I'll buy more, and I'll come often. Oh dear, I just can't do anything with you. All right, since you're a new guest. Finally, Qin Ziming, carrying large and small bags of groceries, walked back home satisfied. Although it cost me money again, I feel much more fulfilled. Looking at his two heavy hands, he said happily. Back in the apartment building, Qin Ziming hesitated for a moment as he passed the door of room 303. Sigh, let's just consider it as building good relationships. He took a breath and then knocked on the door of room 303. After a while, the door opened. Hayakawa Aki had changed out of her uniform and was wearing similar dark-colored loungewear. Her hair was loose, and she looked less sharp, but her eyes still didn't show any emotion. What's up? He asked. That. Qin Ziming picked up the plastic bag in his hand and showed the ingredients inside. I bought some things to make hot pot. It's not fun eating alone, and I bought quite a lot. Would you like to join me, Hayakawa-senpai? Consider it a thank you for your outfit today, and please take care of me in the future. He finished speaking in one breath, then looked at Hayakawa Aki with some trepidation. Hayakawa Aki's gaze swept over the bulging plastic bag in his hand, lingered for a moment on the fresh vegetables and slices of meat, and then looked at Qin Ziming's face, which seemed a little awkward but also full of expectation. After a few seconds of silence, just when Qin Ziming thought he was about to be rejected, Hayakawa Aki softly hummed in agreement. I have too much stuff, do you need help carrying it? Qin Ziming was taken aback for a moment, then quickly realized what was happening and handed over 2 lighter bags. Oh, thank you for your help. Hayakawa Aki took it, turned and walked towards room 304 next door. Qin Ziming quickly followed and opened the door with his key. In the brightly lit kitchen, the sounds of water washing vegetables and chopping vegetables soon filled the air. Qin Ziming busily prepared the soup base and dipping sauce, while Hayakawa quietly helped wash the vegetables, her movements surprisingly skillful and orderly. The two didn't talk much, only exchanging brief, necessary questions and answers. "Where are the bowls and chopsticks?" I just moved here, and all I have are disposable items from the convenience store. I'll go get mine." Before long, in the center of the small living room dining table, a pot on a portable gas stove began to boil, the red and white soup bubbling and releasing a fragrant aroma mixed with the steam. Sliced beef, vegetables, tofu, mushrooms, the table was piled high with food. The two sat down facing each other. Qin Ziming prepared a very spicy dipping sauce for himself, while placing a simple soy sauce and vinegar dish in front of Hayakawa. "I'm starting." Qin Ziming eagerly picked up a piece of scalding hot beef with his chopsticks, blew on it, and stuffed it into his mouth. It was so hot he was panting, but a satisfied expression appeared on his face. "Ah! I'm alive." Hayakawa's movements were much more refined. He picked up a piece of cabbage, rinsed it in the clear broth, dipped it in soy sauce, and quietly put it in his mouth, chewing slowly. The steam from the hot pot filled the air between the two, seemingly softening some of the invisible barrier between them. "The taste is not bad." Hayakawa picked up another piece of tofu and suddenly whispered something. Qin Ziming was struggling with a scalding hot fish ball when he heard this. He looked up and saw that under the warm yellow light, Hayakawa's lowered eyebrows and eyes seemed less sharp. "Haha, right. Hot pot is, well, the best thing to eat in winter back in my hometown." Qin Ziming smiled and scooped up another spoonful of enoki mushrooms, placing it into the small strainer over Hayakawa's side. "This spicy broth is delicious, do you want to try it?" Hayakawa looked at the spoonful of enoki mushroom sizzling in the red oil, paused for a moment, but ultimately didn't refuse. She picked up some and put them in her bowl. Chapter 10. The steam from the hot pot still rose between the two of them, and the aroma of the food temporarily dispelled the lingering blood and fatigue of the day. Qin Ziming was busy scooping beef from the red broth, while Hayakawa quietly ate vegetables and tofu in the clear broth. Apart from the clinking of utensils and the bubbling of the pot, the only sound in the room was chewing. Suddenly, Hayakawa stopped eating. He didn't look at Qin Ziming, his gaze was fixed on the bubbling soup. His voice was lower than usual, as if he had considered his words for a long time before asking. "You are very different from any demon I've ever seen before." Qin Ziming paused in his act of picking up food, then looked up at him. Hayakawa continued, her tone tinged with doubt. "Demons are essentially demons who have possessed human corpses, inheriting some of the demon's abilities and appearance. They typically retain only the most basic desires: eating, destruction, or obsession with a twisted idea. Their behavior is chaotic, their intelligence is often low, and they can only imitate the superficial aspects of humans." He raised his eyes, his gaze sharp as he looked at Qin Ziming. "But you can cook, you know how to utilize the environment and tactics, and even, your thinking pattern is like a human's. Why?" For a moment, the room fell silent, with only the bubbling of the hot pot breaking the silence. Qin Ziming slowly put down his chopsticks, his fingers unconsciously tracing the edge of the disposable plastic cup. He remained silent for a moment, not answering immediately, but turning to look out the window at the deep night sky, where the warm yellow light of the room and his own somewhat blurry shadow were reflected. "Why?" he muttered to himself, a barely perceptible smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Probably because I don't want to die." He turned back, meeting Hayakawa's gaze, his voice calm yet carrying a heavy undertone. "According to you, the demon possessed my body, or rather, we merged. But at the last moment, perhaps my will to survive was too strong, or perhaps something else unexpected happened. In any case, my consciousness, Qin Ziming's consciousness, didn't disappear like the hosts of other demons. Instead, it seized the demon's consciousness and suppressed it. Therefore, I retained my memories, my way of thinking, and even most of my feelings as a human. Qin Ziming paused, then smiled, and said, "Of course, the price is having more parts and instincts that are not human." As he spoke, Qin Ziming pointed to the dark red lines under the corner of his eye. "And then there's the ability to manipulate things, and the thirst for blood." Hayakawa listened quietly, her face expressionless, but the sharpness in her eyes seemed to have softened slightly, replaced by a deeper contemplation. He picked up his glass, took a sip of water, and asked again, this time with a more direct question. "Even in this state, even if everyone treats you like a demon, wary of you, and hunts you down, why do you still want to live?" Qin Ziming was stunned. "Why do I want to live?" This question is both so simple and so complex. In the original world, there was family, friends, unfulfilled dreams, unseen landscapes, untasted delicacies. There were countless reasons to live. But here, in this world fraught with danger, where one has become a non-human being, why? He looked down at his outstretched palm, beneath which surged the power enhanced by absorbing demon blood, along with a latent bloodthirsty urge. He remained silent for a long time, so long that some of the soup in the pot evaporated from the surface, but Hayakawa did not urge him. Living, of course, is just for the sake of living itself. Qin Ziming finally spoke, his voice not loud, but exceptionally clear. He looked up, his eyes filled with confusion and helplessness, but also with a glimmer of unusual determination. "As long as my heart is still beating, I can still breathe, and I can still see the sun rise the next day, the future holds infinite possibilities, doesn't it? Although things seem terrible now, and I can't see the road ahead, once I'm dead, I really have nothing left. I still want to try, in this world, whether I can find a new meaning to living, whether I can change something a little, even if it's just making my life a little better." He was somewhat incoherent, but these were indeed his truest thoughts. It wasn't some lofty ideal, nor some deep-seated hatred, it was simply the most primal, tenacious will to survive, and that faint but persistent hope for possibility. Hayakawa grip on the cup tightened almost imperceptibly. He stared at Qin Ziming, and for the first time, a clear tremor, or even bewilderment, flashed across those usually calm and unwavering eyes. He opened his mouth, as if he wanted to say something, but didn't know how to say it. Is living just about living itself? So simple, and so straightforward. Hayakawa life has always been bound to the word revenge. Find the demon of guns, kill it, and avenge your family. This goal, like a torch in the darkness, guided him, yet also burned within him, constituting almost the entire weight of his existence. He rarely thought about what would happen after revenge, whether he could get revenge, or what he would live for if he didn't have this goal. Qin Ziming's words were like a pebble thrown into the unfathomable lake of his vengeful heart, stirring up tiny but undeniable ripples. Infinite possibilities. Hayakawa repeated the sentence in a low voice, her tone unreadable, whether it was a question or a sigh. He didn't ask any further questions, but simply picked up his chopsticks and silently added the last handful of greens into the boiling pot. The atmosphere seemed to subtly change during the rest of the meal. Although the conversations were still few, Hayakawa would occasionally respond to Qin Ziming's casual questions about whether a certain ingredient was delicious, and even when Qin Ziming was gasping for breath from the spiciness and frantically searching for water, she would slightly curve the corners of her mouth. "Holy crap, these chilies are so spicy." Qin Ziming gulped down half a glass of ice water and stuck out his tongue as he spoke. "He brought it on himself," Hayakawa said calmly, but pushed the unopened bottle of mineral water next to her over. Time passed slowly, the hot pot gradually emptied, and all the ingredients were gone. "That's really great." Qin Ziming leaned back in his chair with satisfaction, patting his slightly bulging belly. Hayakawa Aki got up and began to tidy up the mess on the table. Together, they packed up the disposable tableware, wiped the table clean, and took the pots and stove to the kitchen for a quick wash. By the time everything was settled, it was already quite late. "Thank you for your hospitality today." Hayakawa Aki stood at the door and spoke to Qin Ziming. This was probably the closest he came to being polite all night. "Thank you for your help, and I'm happy to come over." Qin Ziming scratched his head and said softly. "From now on, we'll be neighbors and colleagues. Please take care of me, Hayakawa-senpai." Hayakawa Aki ... Get some rest. Tomorrow's a day off, no tasks, but don't cause trouble. I'm right next door. Okay. The door closed gently, separating the two spaces once again. "I'm sorry, Hayakawa Aki-senpai." Seeing Hayakawa Aki's figure disappear, Qin Ziming felt somewhat ashamed, his heart filled with mixed emotions. What he said was half true and half false, but it was also deliberately leading the conversation. Qin Ziming silently returned to his room. He lay on the still somewhat unfamiliar bed, his thoughts still jumbled, but compared to the previous night, he seemed to feel less empty and bewildered. Go to sleep. Chapter 11. The next morning, the weather was sunny. Sunlight streamed unhindered through the window without curtains, brightly filling the entire room and illuminating the bare walls and floor, making even the dust motes floating in the air clearly visible. Ha! Qin Ziming yawned deeply, rubbed his eyes with the back of his hand, and then slowly sat up. He looked around. Apart from the bed, a bedside table, a chair, and a simple wardrobe, there was nothing else in the room. The sense of security I felt last night from exhaustion has been silently diminished in this overly bright morning light. No, this doesn't look like a place for a human to live. He muttered something to the empty room, a hint of helplessness in his voice. He touched the banknotes in the bedside table drawer, and the remaining amount made his heart ache. But then I thought, I'll probably be staying here for a long time, so this investment doesn't seem worth the effort. Forget it, we still have to spend the money we need to spend. Qin Ziming said something as if to encourage himself, then nimbly got out of bed, stuffed the money into his pocket, and went out again. The target this time was clear, the nearby department stores and home furnishing stores. The department store was bustling with people, and the goods were dazzling. Qin Ziming first browsed through the textile section, touching the different textures of curtain fabrics with his fingers. A middle-aged female shop assistant greeted us warmly. "Guest, are you choosing curtains? What kind would you like?" "Yes, something with good blackout features, but don't make the room too dark." Qin Ziming spoke carefully. "How about this one? It's dark blue, with a velvety texture, and it blocks about 80% of the light. The color is also very pleasing to the eye." The shop assistant recommended it. Qin Ziming pulled back the fabric to examine it, then held it up to the light and gestured. "Isn't the color too dark? A more understated style is easier to match, and look at the quality." The salesperson skillfully unfolded the fabric. "It hangs up nicely and makes the room look tidy." "Okay, this one will do." Qin Ziming nodded, having made up his mind. Then he browsed the home furnishings section and picked out a beige short pile rug, the perfect size to place next to the bed. "This way, your feet won't be cold when you step on them in the morning," he muttered to himself, rolling up the carpet and tucking it under his arm. As he passed by the lighting section, he was drawn to a simple white table lamp. Although he didn't know what it was for, he thought that the room would be too lonely with only the ceiling light on at night, so he put it in the shopping basket anyway. Just consider it adding some atmosphere. Qin Ziming explained to himself, and also bought a clock to tell the time. He stopped again in front of the decorative items shelf. He chose two printed pictures with simple frames, one of Mount Fuji covered in snow, and the other of cherry blossoms in spring. That's really nice, let's hang it in the living room." Qin Ziming nodded with some satisfaction. When purchasing tableware, he carefully selected a set of pure white porcelain bowls and plates and a pair of wooden chopsticks. Now this feels like eating, haha. Touching the familiar feel, Qin Ziming smiled. He also bought 2 soft cushions, a simple 3-tiered bookshelf that he had to assemble himself, several plastic storage boxes, and a 3-piece toothbrush set. With each item he took, he mentally calculated its price to ensure he didn't overspend. After selecting everything, as he stood at the cashier paying, watching the bills being handed out one by one, he couldn't help but sigh softly again. Money really doesn't last long. By the time I had carried all the bags and packages, including that flat bookshelf box that I had to half carry, back to the apartment, it was almost noon. Qin Ziming didn't even have time to eat. After taking a sip of water, he began his busy renovation project. He started by hanging the curtains, clumsily installing the track and hooks by standing on a chair and following the instructions. He worked up a sweat before finally hanging the dark blue curtains. The moment the curtains were drawn, the intense sunlight in the room instantly became soft and warm, changing the overall tone of the space. Next came the carpet. A beige plush carpet was spread out beside the bed. He couldn't wait to step on it barefoot and feel the soft texture under his feet, which made him close his eyes in comfort. Ah, Sri Lanka! Then came assembling the bookshelf. Qin Ziming followed the blueprints, tightening screws and hammering away. Although he installed a board backwards once, a small bookshelf that looked fairly sturdy finally stood in the corner. He put the newly bought Tokyo Living Guide on it. The landscape painting hangs in the most open spot on the living room wall, the clock hangs next to it, the table lamp sits on the bedside table, the 3-piece toothbrush set is placed in the bathroom, the dishes are washed, dried, and stored in the only small cabinet in the kitchen, and miscellaneous items are categorized and put into storage boxes and stuffed under the bed. He worked until 3 or 4 in the afternoon. After the last item was put away, Qin Ziming straightened his slightly sore back and looked around the newly renovated room. Sunlight filtered through the blue curtains, transforming into a soft, hazy glow that cast clear windowpane shadows on the carpet. The air was filled with the faint scent of new textiles, mixed with the smell of paper and wood. Although still simple, it already had a distinct personal touch and traces of life. Now this feels like a home. Qin Ziming was overjoyed and in a great mood, even humming an unknown and severely off-key tune. Bang! Bang! Just then, 2 clear and restrained knocks sounded on the door. Qin Ziming was somewhat surprised. Who would look for me at this time? He walked over and opened the door, only to see Hayakawa standing outside. Hayakawa was still wearing simple grey loungewear, holding a flat, square box about the size of a book, simply wrapped in dark-colored paper. Hayakawa-senpai. Qin Ziming was somewhat surprised. Is there something you need? Hayakawa-aki's gaze swept calmly over him, lingering for a moment on his still sweaty forehead, before she handed him the box, saying in a flat tone. This is for you, a housewarming gift. Qin Ziming was somewhat stunned. He had not expected Hayakawa to make such a move. He instinctively took the box, it wasn't heavy and was neatly packaged. This, you're too kind, Hayakawa-senpai. Qin Ziming was somewhat at a loss. You don't need to spend any money, this can hardly be considered a real housewarming. It's not anything valuable. Hayakawa interrupted him, her tone revealing no emotion. His gaze swept past Qin Ziming, taking in the room and noticing the distinctly different furnishings, new curtains, a carpet, paintings on the walls, and bookshelves. Looks like you've had a busy day. Ah, yes. Qin Ziming stepped aside, showing the view inside and outside, a slightly embarrassed smile on his face. It finally looks like someone's living here. Would you like to come in and sit for a while? I just finished tidying up. Hayakawa shook her head. No, you can continue tidying up. He paused, seemingly thinking for a moment, then added. We'll look at the gift later. After saying that, he didn't say anything more. He nodded slightly to Qin Ziming, then turned and walked back to room 303 next door, closing the door behind him. Qin Ziming returned to the house with the box, still slightly warm from Hayakawa Aki's palm, his heart filled with curiosity and a genuine sense of warmth. He carefully unwrapped the package. Inside were 2 brand new books, a thick demon encyclopedia, new edition, and a slightly thinner analysis of common demon abilities and countermeasures. He picked up the Devil's Compendium, which felt heavy. Opening the hardcover, on the title page, a line of small print is written in meticulous, slightly sharp penmanship. As a demon hunter, the most important thing is the ability to identify demons. It was unsigned, but Qin Ziming recognized it at a glance as written by Hayakawa Aki. He couldn't help but laugh, then shook his head. The warmth in his heart spread slowly, like ink drops in clear water. Haha, this gift, it really is very Hayakawa Aki style. Practical, direct, without any unnecessary sentimental embellishments, yet it hits the nail on the head regarding his most practical needs. He placed the 2 books side by side on the most convenient shelf of his newly bought small bookshelf. Outside the window, the setting sun was slowly sinking, and the golden afterglow edged the brand new blue curtains with a shimmering light, also bathing everything in the house in a warm hue. Qin Ziming stood there quietly for a while. For the first time, he felt that in this perilous and completely unfamiliar world, he had finally found a corner where he could temporarily find refuge and even unexpectedly experience a touch of human warmth. Oh no! This is terrible! He suddenly slapped his forehead, remembering something he had completely forgotten. I was so busy buying all this that I completely forgot to buy a change of clothes and shoes. Meanwhile, in room 303 next door, Hayakawa Aki had already returned to her room, which was so tidy it was almost rigid, with no unnecessary decorations. He stood on the balcony, watching the streetlights gradually illuminate the street below. His face showed no particular expression, but his fingers unconsciously tapped lightly on the cold railing. He himself didn't know the reason for giving the books. Perhaps it's just that the newlyweds, who seem to be struggling to survive and are even clumsily but earnestly decorating their home, really need these most basic things. Chapter 12. Because there are no clothing stores nearby, and it's already past closing time. Qin Ziming could only go downstairs to the nearby convenience store to see if there was anything else he needed. The convenience store's 24-hour sign glowed with a warm orange light as the night deepened. As he pushed open the door, a crisp notification sound rang out, and the clerk, who was tidying the shelves, said without looking up. Welcome. Qin Ziming first found slippers in the daily necessities section, priced at 580 yen. He held it in his hand and squeezed it, then glanced at the price tag. I'll just wear this for now, and buy something nicer later. Qin Ziming sighed softly and put it in the shopping basket. Moving to the food section, the shelves were densely packed with instant noodles, a dazzling array. He bent over, carefully examining the words on the packaging. Pork bone broth. Miso. Salt flavor. He muttered to himself, and finally chose a tonkatsu ramen with a picture of a rich broth on the cover, and also grabbed a box of cheap instant rice balls. I must eat something proper tomorrow. Qin Ziming thought to himself. Back at the checkout counter, the clerk, a young man, scanned the barcode and asked routinely. Does it need to be heated? Okay, could you please heat up the rice balls? I returned to the apartment carrying a small plastic bag. The hallway was quiet. As he passed room 303, he noticed a sliver of light shining through the crack in the door. Qin Ziming returned to his room and changed into the slippers he had just bought. He boiled water in the small electric kettle in the room, made instant noodles, and when he lifted the lid, the rising steam and rich aroma instantly filled the space that had just become a home. Sitting on his newly bought cushion, Qin Ziming leaned against the bedside, slurping instant noodles and eating rice balls from a paper bowl. Night had completely fallen outside the window, and the city lights cast blurry shadows on the carpet through the blue curtains. He ate quickly, the warm food soothed his stomach, which had been empty all day, and it made him relax completely. After finishing his meal, Qin Ziming cleaned up the trash, washed up briefly, and then lay down on the bed. The new curtains do a great job of blocking out light, the room is dimly lit, perfect for sleeping. Qin Ziming stared at the ceiling, his mind blank, his thoughts gradually becoming hazy. The next morning. Bang! Bang! A knock on the door woke Qin Ziming from his sleep. He groggily opened his eyes. "They're here," he responded, then hurriedly got up, put on his clothes, and went to open the door. Outside the door, Hayakawa was already dressed and ready. He was still wearing that black police uniform, with that knife slung across his back. His expression was calm, revealing no emotion. "Good morning, Hayakawa-senpai." Qin Ziming was still not fully awake. "Morning." Hayakawa nodded. "You have 20 minutes to wash up and get ready, then you can set off on patrol." "Okay, right away." Qin Ziming immediately sobered up and rushed into the bathroom. About 15 minutes later, he was all ready, still wearing the same clothes as yesterday, but at least his face was clean and his hair was somewhat combed. He said somewhat apologetically to Hayakawa, who was waiting at the door. "Sorry, senior, I don't have any other clothes. Just pick it up at headquarters after today's patrol." Hayakawa said briefly, then turned and headed towards the stairs. "Let's go." "Okay." Qin Ziming quickly followed. The streets were quiet in the early morning, and there was a slight chill in the air. Hayakawa steps were steady and quick, and Qin Ziming needed to quicken his pace slightly to keep up. "Senior, are our daily patrol routes fixed?" Qin Ziming asked, his breath condensing into white mist in the cold air. "The general plan is fixed, but adjustments will be made based on intelligence." Hayakawa replied, his gaze sweeping over the shops on both sides of the street, the alleyway entrances, and the windows of the buildings. The main focus of the patrols should be on places where demons might be attracted, such as areas with high foot traffic, areas prone to generating negative emotions, or locations with reported sightings. What does negative emotions refer to? Fear, despair, hatred, intense pain. Hayakawa said very calmly. These emotions attract demons, they feed on them and are drawn to them. Qin Ziming nodded thoughtfully. He recalled the original setting. In this world, human fear takes form, giving birth to demons. The more terrifying a demon's name, the stronger its power. Moreover, after death, it goes to hell, and after dying in hell, it returns to the human world, making it virtually immortal. The two turned a street corner, and there was a small park in front of them. Several elderly people were strolling in the park, while commuters hurried through, taking shortcuts. "What about places like this?" Qin Ziming pointed to the park and asked. "Does it happen here too?" "Even in peaceful places, demons can appear." Hayakawa stopped and turned her gaze to a bench deep in the park. There was a small-scale demon attack here. An unemployed man, in his despair while attempting suicide, caused a suicide demon to possess his body. Qin Ziming was stunned. And what happened next? It was naturally disposed of. Hayakawa answered, and started walking again. Therefore, patrolling is not just about finding demons that have already appeared, but also about being aware of people and events that may trigger incidents. Oh. Qin Ziming nodded in agreement. Why didn't he remember these details in the original work? Over the next few hours, Hayakawa led Qin Ziming through commercial streets, residential areas, school areas, and even past an abandoned small factory. At each new location, Hayakawa would simply explain the local characteristics and points to note, just as he had done at the beginning. Hayakawa will answer Qin Ziming's questions as long as they aren't too outrageous. "Senior, is there a pattern to the appearance of demons?" No. How different are there between demons? Look at the level of people's fear of it. What if we encounter a demon we can't defeat? Call for backup, retreat, and survive. And so, patrolling until about 12:30 p.m., when Hayakawa stopped in front of a restaurant that looked clean and tidy. Let's take a break and have lunch here. Okay, sure. Qin Ziming looked at the restaurant and nodded hurriedly. He hadn't eaten anything that morning and was starving. A noren, traditional Japanese curtain, hangs on the restaurant's facade, and the wind chimes tinkle crisply when the wooden door is pushed open. The room wasn't very big, with about 10 tables, and about half of the guests were already seated. The proprietress was a kind woman in her 40s who greeted Hayakawa with a smile. Mr. Hayakawa, oh? Did you bring a newcomer today? Yes, that's right. Hayakawa nodded and walked to the window seat with practiced ease. Qin Ziming sat down and curiously looked around the shop. A wooden menu board hangs on the wall, with the names and prices of various dishes written in calligraphy. Oyakodon, chicken and egg rice bowl, pork cutlet rice, curry rice, udon noodles, set meals. The dazzling array of choices made him a little overwhelmed. The proprietress handed over a damp towel and tea, and then brought over 2 paper menus, saying gently, "We have a special ginger braised pork set meal today, Mr. Hayakawa, would you like to try it?" Hayakawa took the menu and looked at Qin Ziming. "What would you like to eat?" Qin Ziming stared at the menu, somewhat perplexed. To be honest, he really didn't know what was so good about Japanese food. The food here is pretty good. Hayakawa seemed to have noticed Qin Ziming's predicament. Qin Ziming looked at it carefully for a while, and finally pointed to the menu and said, "Then I'll have this curry pork cutlet rice, and this miso soup set meal. Can you eat this much?" Hayakawa raised an eyebrow. "I'm really hungry." Qin Ziming honestly admitted it. Chapter 13. Hayakawa looked at him speechlessly, then turned to the proprietress and said, "A set meal of braised pork with ginger, a curry pork chop rice, a miso soup set meal, plus." He paused, then said, "A serving of almond tofu." "Okay. The almond tofu, the usual, will be served after the meal, right?" The proprietress smiled and made a note of it. "Yes, thank you." After the proprietress left, Qin Ziming couldn't help but ask, "Does the senior really like almond tofu?" Hayakawa was drying her hands with a towel when she paused for a moment. "I guess so." "What does it taste like?" "I've never tried it before." This is true, he probably never even tasted it in his past life. "It tastes like almonds." Hayakawa answer caused Qin Ziming's eye to twitch slightly. "All right." The food was served quickly. Qin Ziming's curry pork chop rice was served on a large plate, with a golden and crispy pork chop on top of the rice, accompanied by a thick curry sauce, a small bowl of miso soup, and several side dishes. The aroma was so enticing that his stomach growled again. "I'm starting to eat." Hayakawa clasped her hands together, spoke softly, and then picked up her chopsticks. "Let's dig in." Qin Ziming copied the same action, and then eagerly scooped up a large spoonful of curry rice and put it in his mouth. The warm curry had a slightly spicy aroma, the pork chop was crispy on the outside and tender on the inside, and the rice was perfectly cooked. Perhaps because he was extremely hungry, he felt this was the best meal he had ever eaten. "Eat slowly." Hayakawa voice came from across the way. Qin Ziming raised his head, his mouth still stuffed with food, and mumbled, "I'm so hungry, and it tastes so good." Hayakawa didn't say anything more, just quietly ate her ginger braised pork, a stark contrast to Qin Ziming's ravenous eating. Halfway through the meal, Hayakawa suddenly used the serving chopsticks to take a piece of braised pork with ginger from her plate and put it on Qin Ziming's plate. Qin Ziming froze, even stopping his chewing motion. "Seeing you so hungry, I can't help but feel a little uncomfortable." Hayakawa Aki didn't look at him, continuing to eat her meal, her tone carrying a barely perceptible awkwardness. Eat more protein, you have patrol duties this afternoon. Qin Ziming blinked, then smiled. Hehe, thank you, senior. Qin Ziming's smile was very sincere. Hayakawa Aki glanced up, then quickly lowered her gaze, simply responding with a soft hum. Qin Ziming ate the pork that Hayakawa Aki had given him. It was perfectly balanced between salty and sweet, and the meat was tender and delicious. After the meal, the proprietress brought over almond tofu. The white, tofu-like dessert was served in a small porcelain bowl, drizzled with amber syrup, and sprinkled with a few goji berries as a garnish. Hayakawa Aki scooped up a piece with a small spoon and put it in her mouth. Qin Ziming looked at him and suddenly remembered that in the original work, Hayakawa Aki really liked almond tofu. In fact, it was one of the few things that could make him show such emotion as liking it. Why does the senior like this? Qin Ziming couldn't help but ask again. Hayakawa Aki put down her spoon, looked at the remaining almond tofu in the bowl, and remained silent for a few seconds before saying, "There's no particular reason, it's just a habit." He didn't say much, but Qin Ziming caught something in his brief change of expression, a faint, hidden longing. Hayakawa Aki continued eating her almond tofu, occasionally glancing across the table. Qin Ziming was drinking the last few drops of miso soup, letting out a satisfied sigh, his face showing a blissful expression of having eaten his fill. Since the passing of his family, Hayakawa Aki has not had a meal like this with anyone other than Himeno-senpai for a long time. His colleagues at the Public Security Bureau occasionally have meals together, but that's more like a work-related activity. Such a simple, everyday meal, almost home-cooked, is a very distant memory for him. He looked at Qin Ziming, this newcomer who had suddenly barged into his life, clumsy and inexperienced, but trying hard to survive in this cruel world, even clumsily trying to establish a trace of life. She might oversleep in the morning, wolf down her food when hungry, be happy to receive a book, and ask a lot of basic questions. For a fleeting moment, a strange feeling welled up in Hayakawa Akira's heart. It felt like a long time ago, when he and his younger brother ate together, fighting over food, talking, and laughing. While they may not be exactly the same, the subtle, warm, and slightly helpless sense of responsibility is surprisingly similar. He lowered his eyes, put the last bite of almond tofu into his mouth, and the sweet and slightly bitter taste melted on his tongue, familiar yet strange. "Senior." Qin Ziming's voice brought Hayakawa Aki back to her senses. "Let's go after we finish eating." Hayakawa Aki put down her spoon and wiped her mouth. "There are still 2 areas to patrol this afternoon." "Okay." Qin Ziming nodded quickly. When it came time to pay the bill, Hayakawa Aki paid for both of them. Qin Ziming wanted to say something, but Hayakawa Aki had already pushed the door open and left. Stepping out of the restaurant, the afternoon sun was a bit too bright, and Qin Ziming was still a little unaccustomed to it. "Next, let's check out the commercial street to the south." Hayakawa Akikika and Qin Ziming spoke. "There's a lot of foot traffic there, we need to patrol it carefully." "Yes." Qin Ziming followed behind him. It takes about 20 minutes to walk from the restaurant to the shopping street to the south. The two walked through several relatively quiet residential streets, where afternoon sunlight filtered through the branches of the roadside trees, casting dappled shadows on the pavement. The air was filled with the faint aroma of cooking from nearby houses, and occasionally the sounds of a television or children's laughter could be heard. Qin Ziming followed half a step behind Hayakawa Aki, still digesting the satisfaction from the meal he had just eaten. He was wondering whether he should ask where to buy clothes after the afternoon patrol when suddenly, a faint scent entered his nostrils. The smell was hard to describe, it was like rust mixed with rotting flesh, with a cloyingly sweet, fishy odor, and an indescribable, instinctively repulsive and terrifying scent. Qin Ziming's stomach clenched uncontrollably, and he almost vomited up the lunch he had just eaten. "Senior." He stopped, his face showing some distress, and asked, "Can you smell it?" Hayakawa stopped almost simultaneously. His expression instantly sharpened, and he turned to ask, "What smells like?" "It's disgusting, it looks like blood, or like something rotten." Qin Ziming covered his nose and said, "And it makes you very uncomfortable, the kind of discomfort that gives you the creeps. There's a demon nearby." Hayakawa did not question Qin Ziming's description. After all, demons' senses are indeed stronger than humans. He quickly looked around, his eyes scanning every corner of the street. At this moment, both of them noticed something was wrong. The sparse pedestrians ahead suddenly began to run towards them at a faster pace. At first, only a few people jogged, but then more and more people surged in from the direction of the shopping street, their faces showing undisguised panic. "What happened?" "Run! Over there! There's a demon over there!" The noise was mixed with screams. A middle-aged man stumbled as he ran past them, nearly falling, but was caught by Hayakawa. "What happened?" Hayakawa asked the question. The man's face was deathly pale, and his lips trembled as he pointed behind them, towards the shopping street. The building collapsed. There was something, black, with many hands. Before the words had even finished. Boom! A deafening explosion came from the direction of the shopping street, followed by the roar of buildings collapsing. The ground was trembling slightly, and a cloud of smoke mixed with dust and debris rose in the distance. Hayakawa reaction was astonishingly fast. Almost at the same time as the explosion, he drew his long samurai sword from behind his back, and with his other hand, he pulled out a police walkie-talkie. "This is Hayakawa. A suspected demon attack has occurred in the Minami 3rd Ward shopping district. Requesting backup and immediate evacuation of residents in the area. Repeat, requesting backup and evacuation." A hurried response came from the walkie-talkie. "Received. Support has been deployed. Please maintain communication." Hayakawa threw the scabbard on the ground, picked up the sword, turned to Qin Ziming, and said sternly, "Stay close to me. If things get bad, evacuate immediately, understand?" "Clear." Following Qin Ziming's response, the two rushed against the flow of people towards the shopping street. The closer he got to that spot, the stronger the nauseating smell became, almost solidifying as it seeped into Qin Ziming's lungs. After turning the last street corner, the sight before him made him gasp. At the entrance to the shopping street, a 6-story residential building had collapsed in the middle, with the reinforced concrete debris piled up like a small mountain, and the smoke and dust had not yet completely dissipated. And standing atop those ruins was something, or rather, a demon. Chapter 14. It was about 3 stories tall, its body made of some kind of pitch-black, asphalt-like substance, its surface constantly writhing and undulating, as if it were made of countless black tentacles entangled together. At least a dozen arms extend from both sides of the torso, each with a different shape. Some resemble human arms but end in sharp bony blades, some look like twisted tree trunks covered in knots, and some are simply large, black tentacles. What's most unsettling is its head. It wasn't a formed head, but a constantly shifting mass of black matter with a scarlet slit splitting open in the center, resembling a mouth or a giant eye. At that moment, the crack was directly facing them, emitting a low, guttural sound, as if countless people were groaning simultaneously. "Humans, fear, hehehe, delicious. Swamp demon." Hayakawa shielded Qin Ziming half a step behind him, gripped his sword with both hands, leaned forward slightly, and assumed a fighting stance. "Step back, this is not something you can handle right now." Qin Ziming wanted to say something, but Hayakawa had already launched an attack. He was incredibly fast, closing the distance to the demon in almost a few seconds. The katana drew a gleaming silver arc in the air, slashing straight at the demon's closest arm, the one with a bone blade at the end, which was raised high, ready to smash into the ruins. Pfft! The blade sank deep into the black substance. Hayakawa twisted his wrist and pulled sharply horizontally, severing the arm in two. Black slime gushed out, making a sizzling, corrosive sound as it hit the ground. The demon let out a piercing scream, and the severed arm began to writhe and regenerate. At the same time, 3 other arms attacked Hayakawa from different directions, one striking him on the head, while the other 2 attacked from the left and right. Instead of retreating, Hayakawa advanced, crouching down and sliding under the descending arm. He then flicked his blade upwards, severing the end of another arm on the side. His movements were clean and efficient, every dodge and attack was so precise it seemed calculated. But the demon had too many arms. Just as Hayakawa severed the end of his third arm, a tentacle that had been lurking in the shadows of the ruins suddenly sprang up and lashed out at his waist from behind. Although Hayakawa managed to turn to the side in time, her left arm was still grazed, and her uniform sleeve tore instantly, leaving her skin ripped open. "Senior!" Qin Ziming exclaimed in surprise. Ignoring her wounds, Hayakawa used the force of the tentacle's lash to leap backward, raising her left hand with her thumb and middle finger already clasped together, ready to summon the fox demon. But the swamp demon seemed to sense the danger. The severed arm, which was regenerating, suddenly stretched and deformed at an incredible speed. The end was no longer a bone blade, but a huge hand with 5 fingers spread out, and a mouth full of sharp teeth split open in the center of the palm. "Contracts, I hate them." His palm slammed down, smashing into the ground in front of him. The ground exploded instantly, sending rubble and dust flying everywhere. The shockwave sent Hayakawa flying, crashing heavily into the roller shutter of a shop across the street. He coughed up blood, his katana flew out of his hand, and his left hand gesture was also interrupted. "Senior! How are you?" Qin Ziming was genuinely panicked this time. He saw Hayakawa try to get up, but his body swayed and he fell to his knees again. It seemed that the impact might have injured his internal organs. The demon raised all 4 arms simultaneously, slamming them down at Hayakawa from different angles. If someone were hit, they would be torn to pieces. Qin Ziming's mind was in complete chaos, but he forced himself to calm down. He quickly reached out and aimed at Hayakawa. "Get moving, get moving, get moving." Qin Ziming gritted his teeth, the dark red lines under his eyes began to heat up, and some kind of power surged from the depths of his body. Hayakawa body suddenly blurred from its original spot, and the next moment it appeared behind a trash can a few meters away from Qin Ziming. The distance wasn't far, but it was just enough to avoid the combined attack of 4 arms. Boom! Where the arm struck, a large crater was created in the asphalt road, and gravel flew everywhere. Hayakawa collapsed beside the trash can, struggling to lift his head to look at Qin Ziming. A flicker of surprise crossed his eyes, but it was quickly replaced by anxiety. He shouted, "Idiot, run!" But before he could finish speaking, the demon's attack had already turned on Qin Ziming. The arm with a mouth in its palm reached out, its 5 fingers spread wide, moving so fast that Qin Ziming had no time to react. He felt a sudden tightening around his waist, and he was grabbed and lifted up in front of the demon's face. Such a weak human, yet possesses strange power, a contract. The demon's voice echoed in his mind, filled with curiosity and greed. Its 5 fingers began to tighten. A sharp pain shot through my lower back instantly. Qin Ziming heard his bones creak under the strain, his lungs were being compressed, he couldn't breathe, and he lost feeling in his lower body. His vision began to blur, but he saw below him. Hayakawa was struggling to get up, clutching a short knife she had somehow produced, but it was too far away. "Am I going to die? To die in this absurd world, to die at the hands of this demon? Are you kidding me?" Qin Ziming bit his tongue hard, his eyes hardening, his amber pupils growing brighter. He roared fiercely. I'm already here, I've eaten, I've furnished the house, I've put away the books. How could I possibly die here? I still have so many things to do. Qin Ziming's eyes began to turn bloodshot. He stared at the black